To lead us through this section is Professor Noah Midamba, an internationally respected scholar in defense and foreign policy with over 40 years of experience, and he's still standing straight, in academia and leadership as the second vice chancellor of KCA University. When he began with the institution, it had about 7,000 students, and now enrollment has increased to 16,000. 23,000 as of today. Thank you very much. He has held senior roles in US institutions, including vice president at Kent State University and chief international officer at Youngstown State University. He's an educator, strategist, and mentor. Whenever you see him coming on TV or in the media spaces, it's mostly to discuss about how our defense and foreign policies should contribute to education and governance, and he's been recognized for his contribution in that direction. He is a leader, staunch leader, in fostering ethical practices and development through various organizations and media engagements. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him his clap as he takes us through this brief panel, and we discuss what private sector is doing, examples from what private sector is doing in the space. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Take it away, Professor.
Good afternoon, my people. This is wonderful. We like all to thank Fatuma for bringing us together from all the continent in Africa and focusing on an issue that I believe is the cornerstone of what will make a difference in this continent of ours. The discussion has been wonderful, and now we are going to focus on a few people that will give us compelling evidence on the matters regarding corruption. So let's start with the Soji. Soji, are you here? Oh, okay, Soji, come along.
So let's give Soji a round of applause.
Yes, that's Mr. Soji.
Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's as big as anybody in Africa. Now, who else is coming? Madam Gloria. Yeah. Join us. David will be joining us online. So let's start with you, Soji. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What impact as the maritime anti-corruption, let's give you one at a time, network had on reducing corruption in Nigeria maritime?
Okay. Mr. Chair, if you permit me,
yes.
I will start with the statement that we will not eradicate corruption. And before you throw me out of the room, the first statement is we have not eradicated decay, have we? No. Instead, we have introduced energies to preserve things against decay. So I want to put it to you that integrity can be built even in the presence of corruption. And that is really what our goal should be, how to build integrity in spite of corruption. And in Nigeria, let me start from the very beginning with the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. Their aha moment was when the UK Bribery Act came into force. And it introduced a new offense, which is the offense of the failure to prevent bribery. And so they recognized that there was great risk for them because all the insurances for the maritime sector done through the City of London. So that law was going to have effect on them. And so 8 companies came together and said, what are we going to do? Because we could be vulnerable in a place like Nigeria. If somebody bribed a public official in Nigeria, we could be liable, even though we're in Denmark, but our insurers are in London. So there is a problem here. And that's what brought them together. It's not that they were cleaner. And I like where we started from today, that business is part of the problem, but business can also be part of the solution. So what did they meet at the time? I think it took about 150 signatures for a vessel to come in, do its business, and leave. As many as that. 150 signatures. So 150 potential toll gates or extortion points that were there at the time. Also, it used to take 6 to 7 hours to go from anchorage to berth. So a lot of delays before you could even start your business in Nigeria. If you had a dispute on any issue with a government official, it could take you 7 to 9 days to resolve. And yet, 1 extra day could put you off charter, where and it's costing you $20,000 to $150,000 for every extra day that you're spending in port. And not only that, generally coming to a port in Nigeria costs the private sector on costs, extra costs of, on average, $150,000. What has the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, in partnering with business, civil society, and government in Nigeria, achieved? Today, it costs them about, on average, $20,000 to visit a port in Nigeria. So a saving of $130,000. It used to take, like I said, 6 to 7 hours to move from anchorage to berth. Today, it's 90 minutes. Yes, and it used to take like 7 to 9 days to resolve issues when there was an issue with public officials. Today, it is usually between 2 and 4 hours, certainly while the vessel is doing its normal business. They are able to resolve issues without it resulting into extra days of stay. So that has been the concrete things that have come out of the collective action. However, in the road to the collective action, certain things had to be done. For instance, standard operating procedures had to be agreed. And we're talking working with 14 government agencies. And it was thanks to the UNDP that the relationship was brokered with the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But they allowed this collective from private sector, business, and civil society. And after having the improved operating procedures, we also had a grievance reporting mechanism put in place so that if an official decided they were not going to follow the new operating procedures, you had recourse and you could complain. But from civil society and from business, we couldn't get access to information because government tells you everything they hold, even when you are the one who gave it to them, is now secret once it's gotten to them. So we had to create our own data gathering and evidence gathering system, which is what helped us to know things had changed. 2019, we had 266 incidents of demands for large unreceipted cash payments in US dollars by our officials. That fell to 128 in 2020, and then fell the next year to 84 incidents, then fell to 48, and last year 45. Incidents. So year on year, the collective action has been driving down the incidents of this bribe demands. And what was the game changer was that the presidency agreed with us that there was no consequences for bad behavior. And they instituted sting operations. And the sting operations started to catch government officials red-handed at what they were doing, and the news got around, and I think people decided that staying at their desks was better than visiting some of the cold rooms that are that have iron grills. Yes. So they decided to change behavior. But at the core of all of this is the government officers who were for the change. And they are really the heroes of the change that was achieved in Nigeria.
Great. So we can go ahead and get David too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
David,
you.
can you hear me?
Good afternoon. I join you from South Africa. So jumbo to the team. I'll do a brief introduction of myself. My name is David Mparutsa. I'm the regional head of enterprise and supply chain development for ABSA Africa. So based in Johannesburg, but do support all our markets in Africa, including Kenya, Uganda, as well as Tanzania in East Africa. I am also an Ethics First Advisory Board member, so also work very closely with Lola and team. And I do believe the brief I was given was to come and maybe just give a view of how the financial services sector is dealing with compliance or is dealing with issues of corruption within the sector. So representing the banking sector, but also ABSA Bank and the Center for International Private Enterprise. So I think, you know, my departure point, Mr. Moderator, is the financial services sector is highly regulated, right? Whether that is, you know, the central bank, we've got different financial services authorities. In South Africa, for instance, we've got the South Africa Financial Intelligence Center. And that broadly sets about the regulations in terms of anti-money laundering, anti-bribery and corruption, as well as how you deal with public officials, just to name, you know, a few things, right? So that broadly sets the legislation that all banks or all financial services have to adhere to. But as a result of that, banks then go and set their own policies, or should I say financial institutions then have to set their own internal policies to ensure that we are compliant with the central bank and the financial services, you know, authorities. The repercussions of obviously not following the regulations set out by your central bank with regards anti-money laundering, anti-bribery and corruption are quite dire and severe. So it could lead to, you know, something as much as your loss of license to do banking, right? So you can effectively have to stop your operation if you're not following some of these regulations that have been set by your central bank. Financial fines could be massive. I was reading earlier, I think the largest financial fine imposed on a bank for not following AML regulations was to the tune of $3 billion, right? I don't even know how many banks in Africa have an annual revenue of $3 billion. And this bank, I think it was in the US, was levied a fine of $3 billion for not following those regulations. So the financial implications of the financial fines are significant, right? And I think some of the other repercussions could even go to as much as imprisonment. So again, to ensure that, you know, banks, financial services sectors adhere to these policies, we would set our own internal policies. Those could be around anti-bribery and corruption. It could be around gifts and entertainment, which is kind of a critical one, especially when it comes to bribery and corruption, as well as anti-money laundering. So we'd have our own internal policies that we monitor within the bank, right? Adherence to these policies for staff members is critical. So we would have training that we do annually and attestations that we are aware of what those policies are and what we are supposed to do in certain situations. If we don't, you know, do the training, or if we don't do the attestations annually, most financial services would actually even revoke your access to systems. So you would go to work and you would not be able to log on to the network if you have not done the attestations, or if you have not done the training around, you know, financial crime. In a lot of instances, it forms part of our scorecard. So again, if you haven't, you know, followed or done the training, that will have an impact on your potential performance and could even have an impact on your potential, reward. So again, very strict monitoring in terms of staff complying to these, policies. At business level, we would also then have compliance officers. So each business unit would have a dedicated compliance officer that will basically, guide us in terms of challenges that we're facing when we're dealing with our clients. So we've got an open line to a dedicated compliance officer. And it's been very interesting how compliance is almost adopted a different stance rather than being a policeman of sorts, is having a very open relationship with business and their stakeholders. So one would be, feel very comfortable to call your compliance officer if you are presented with a particular situation and you don't know exactly how to go about, doing that. Screening of staff that enter the financial services sector is also something very critical. So you would go from, police checks, you would have credit checks, you would have validation of your qualifications. So trying to ensure that the people that we bring into the sector have got the right ethical standard. And hence, if they are then confronted with unethical situations, chances of them following the ethical path is kind of, greater than them not doing it. And the last one is then obviously screening of our clients. So we screen our clients for adverse news. We screen clients when we onboard them. We screen clients when we transact with them. And we screen clients on an ad hoc basis. So it's quite a rigorous legislated environment, that allows us to manage corruption risk, money laundering risk, financial crime. And because we're at the center, being financial institutions of money moving around, the adherence to such is taken very strongly by the institutions that we work for, in light of us trying to drive more ethical business practices amongst the banks, with our clients and with our customers. So, Mr. Moderator, I hope that covers a little bit of how the financial sector is addressing, some of these concerns.
Sound very good. Is there any reaction from the audience?
Hi, David. This is Fatma. Hi.
Jambo, Fatima.
I find that the banks are really quite highly regulated in terms of the way they do business. And interesting, to be honest with you, one of the banks, maybe this is what makes a difference between the boys and the men, actually told me that, Mama, are you sure you are Kenyan? Mm-hmm. Because in Kenya, even people who have the money need to give something to get a loan. So I'm happy to note that ABSA is doing things differently. What we are talking about, in addition to what you said, we've just been told by Mr. Apampa Soji from Nigeria about the collective action that they have done in the maritime, and it seems to be pretty successful because the numbers of bribe taking or bribe asking have actually gone down. Is there anything that is happening in South Africa, something that we were told this morning, if it works, borrow it with pride, something that we can borrow from South Africa as far as collective action is concerned? Thank you, David.
Yeah, interesting, question, Fatima. Maybe to approach it from a financial, services sector. I think what you find is a lot of collaboration amongst the financial institutions to try and understand where there's areas of weakness within the ecosystem. So we'd have the Bankers Association of South Africa, for instance, that's looking at where we are still exposed to risk from a bribery and a corruption point of view, and jointly trying to come up with solutions that address the financial services sectors, right? Outside of that, to be honest with you, Fatima, what I am seeing from South Africa. And we can even talk at a macro level, and I'm talking at a government level, is the government is coming down quite hard and fast on instances of corruption which are being reported. I think probably one of the benefits that South Africa still has, and some other countries in Southern Africa, is an independent judiciary. And I think our president has done quite a lot of work in terms of setting the tone at the top, if I can call it that. So if there are members of parliament that insinuated for bribery and corruption, they have to step aside immediately. And I think that's just become, or that's just become the norm course of how corruption is dealt with. So I think nothing really, generic, but the tone at the top. So what the president is doing and what the politicians are sort of now scrutinized against. I think that's setting a path for a greater future in terms of eradicating bribery and corruption, which is often quite a lot of times in the public sector, but there is a very strong tone at the top at the moment.
Thank you, David. I think what it needs is that tone at the top, both from the private sector as well as the government sector, because the two are symbiotic. Thanks, David. Over to you, Prof.
Yeah, thank you, David. Also from me, the public sector and private sector working together. That's the only way we can solve this monster.
Thank you very much. My name is Gloria Ndekei. I am the Executive Director for KEPSA Foundation. And I'm happy to be here with Prof and my fellow panelists and the team on the floor. Thank you very much, SAIP, for bringing us on the table. Congratulations, ABEC, for this well-arranged conference. I was asked to come and bring lessons from the 2019 anti-corruption conference that we did at the Bomas of Kenya between Kenya Private Sector Alliance and government and the multi-stakeholder forum. I have a very hard duty to come and speak about, tell people what they said. Nobody wants to be told, what did you say and what have you done? Is the religious community here? Please put your hands up. I have all the bullets of what we said we were going to do in 2019. Please put your hand up. The civil society, I can see my friend Sheila here. I know what you said that you were going to do in 2019. The business community, and I'm appreciating our KEPSA, our KEPSA director and advisor, Mike Eldon. Please put your hand up. I saw you at the Bomas conference saying a few things that you are going to do. And I think the government has gone. KAM, our members, what did you say you were going to do in 2019? Ben. There are things that you said that you are going to track. It's 5 years down the line. So I am that person who has that the youth and the women, I also have all the things that you said that you are going to do in 2019. So let's listen to what we said. Our foundation, KEPSA Foundation, was established in 2015 as the social arm of KEPSA industry. KEPSA industry is the apex body for business organizations, business management organizations, as well as corporates. KEPSA industry aims to get to global competitiveness, but the foundation reminds us all the time to adhere to the social impacts through vulnerable groups and communities and going to the grassroots so that we can also talk about the ESGs and, of course, the social development goals. We also remind industry that we cannot do anything unless we adhere to the key principles of responsible investment. And that is why this conference is also very, very, very relevant because corruption or anti-corruption is one of those areas that if businesses do not look at that particular area of corruption, then we are not going to get to global competitiveness. Doesn't matter how much money you make. If you make that money without adhering to key principles of responsible investment, then you are not considered to be tops of the tops as far as business is concerned. So business ethics is very, very important, and we have all got to check on what is supposed to be done. Under KEPSA Foundation, let me say that we've been having a program called Mukenya Daima, which speaks to peaceful elections and responsible voting and tracking manifestos and commitments exchanged during or before the presidential debates which we hold or conduct as a foundation. We have worked as a foundation a lot with SAIP, and it was one of the deliberations of the Bomas Conference on issues of the Bribery Act. They helped us to develop a simplified version, and we launched the Bribery Act 2016 with the help of SAIP. Thank you, SAIP. Under that, we spoke a lot in Bomas about issues of not leaving anybody behind as far as business is concerned. And those were the small and micro enterprises, whereby the big businesses may do a lot of businesses, but if they do not have linkages to the person under there, if they do not have linkages to help that person come up and coming back to this conference, if a lot of money falls through the crack as the small businesses try to do better business, then we'll not be working. So under SAIP again, we implemented the digital economy matrix in partnership, which was going to empower private sector leadership in digital economic transformation. This was going to enhance the accountability of government on progress made on the digital economic commitments and the ICT master plan by tracking the scorecard on digital economy transformation. This program is still going on. We are looking to see whether everybody can loop in so that probably we can put government to task to see whether it is delivering for the small and micro entrepreneurs by taking this matrix and seeing where are we as far as what the commitments were during the elections. As a private sector and as a foundation, we are also recognizing that, yes, we have talked about bribing, stealing, theft, that is, so to speak, money laundering, all those things that speak to actual giving of money that is not supposed to be given. But there is something that has also been hurting business, and that is the promoting the infospace integrity. A lot of our businesses are coming out of businesses because of that competition of using false information, globally and as well as in Kenya. You find that there is competition that is put on table is not sincere competition. One company, it could be a competitor, will come up with a story about the product of another company. And using disinformation, I know a lot of people don't like hearing that word, disinformation is causing a lot of problems with our businesses. Again, we are working with SAIP, and we are going to be launching the fact check unit in businesses that is going to help us even monitor, and not only monitor, but come up with a policy that will help us to see if disinformation can stop affecting our businesses. And we have a steering committee that has been put in place that will help us track that up to the end. I know you are telling me that this is now, I wanted to go back to my teams. Give me just 2 minutes.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah.
You do have some time.
So what did the private sector commit? What did the private sector commit? Because I don't want to say the commitments of the government like I've promised, or judiciary, or the religious people. Let me talk about what the private sector committed. The private sector agreed to work with the multi-agency task force. And that task force included the government agencies. And I've heard my friend from Nigeria speak about their agencies. And we tasked everybody to do self-reflection. every company to do self-reflection. And this self-reflection was supposed to help companies identify the forms of corruption that were prevailing within themselves and coming up with the strategies that were going to combat that particular issue. So the private sector pointed out that corruption undermined unlimited development. We said that it was also threatening our economy. And the effects of the corruption and economic growth were very significant as far as business was concerned. As a result, we have had inflated consumer prices. We have had decreased foreign direct investment. We have had minimized tax revenue because of evasion and uncertainty of economic transactions. It was noted that we were going to task that task force to galvanize and collect all the actions from all the players so that we could all fight the vice. We agreed that it was not going to be done by one agency, because even if the private sector said they were going to do it, if the agencies, government agencies, were not going to cooperate, then we were not going to have a good deal. So can the war against corruption in the private sector be won? And the private sector is believing that it can be won, it can be prevented, and it could also be eradicated. And that is what we have done by through the government stakeholders, the operationalizing of the Bribery Act, subscribing to our friend here, the Global Compact Principle, number 10, and we haven't probably developed the internal, the communal, the strategies for fighting corruption. But different companies have had their different code of ethics for that. Fast-tracking fair and punitive processes probably could help. And the issue of penalizing illegally gained asset has been underscored. We are still saying that we must create education, more education than we have done before. And to inculcate it, it must start from family. Because, Professor, if you start training an 18-year-old, socialization started from 0 years. By the time they are 12 years, it's finished. The rest is counseling. So the value of curbing corruption must start from the schools, from the women, socializing your children, that taking a pencil is wrong, that taking somebody's thing is not correct. Because if it is right to come home with a pencil, if it is right to take your neighbor's shirt, if it is right to even when the children are praying, how will they know it is wrong at that particular age? So let us also adhere to the socialization processes and note that this is something, if Kenya has to do it, as we curb and enforce, the culture must stop from year 0. I thank you.
Thank you. Given your knowledge of the continent of Africa, given the work you're doing within CAPSA, what specific lesson that can be applied across the continent?
I think the continent should be looked at as a country now. We've been talking about a big Africa. But the things that are happening in Kenya must happen in Uganda. The laws that happen in Uganda or Tanzania must also be implemented in Kenya, so that we do not have, when we are talking about East African Business Council, we have common values that this is wrong here and this must be taken as wrong in every country. And the enforcement direction must be taken by everyone. So I think the anti-corruption measures need to be one. We must have one policy for Africa. I don't know whether that is being abstract. We must have one policy for Africa so that when you are crossing the borders, you are not crossing the border to go and find a different policy as far as that is concerned. If we can just start with that one policy before we even get the other policies, we'll have done our work maybe 90% as far as development for Africa is concerned.
Right. Soji, I will ask you exactly the same question. Given your knowledge of Africa and the wonderful work you're doing in Nigeria, what message can you take across the continent?
Okay, the message really is not to be intimidated by corruption. The first lesson we need to take is the need to work together. Those who are perpetrating corruption, they meet in the middle of the night, they share resources, they are thick as thieves. Honestly, but when you come to those who want to do the right thing, they are so arrogant. They always want to be an island to themselves. Well, I'm okay. Well, and they're not really concerned about what is happening across society, to be honest, while the damage is being done. So except we come together, especially those who profess to want to build integrity, except we come together, there's not going to be much change, at least not much sustainable change across Africa. So that is the first place we need to start from, finding those ways that we can come together and have a uniform vision for what tomorrow can be like for us if we dealt with corruption.
Very nice. David, are you still with us? David?
I am, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. You have listened to the two presenters. Can you also answer the same question? The work you're doing in South Africa, how can we apply it across the continent of Africa?
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. I think these dialogues are key to continuing the battle and the fight, against corruption. So, what I would say is we need more platforms, like these, to share ideas of what the public sector is doing, what the private sector is doing, the impact to business, the impact to GDP growth, the impact to success of this continent. I think we need more dialogue, and I think we need to start showcasing how Africa might be moving a little bit slower because of issues embedded within corruption. So certainly, to see much more of this dialogue happening as it is now in East Africa, also happening in Southern Africa, in West Africa as well, to create visibility of the impact that this still has on our continent, and how each and every person has got a role to play in this. Like my fellow panelists said, it starts with telling your school children that it's wrong to take this pen, and having that built into the DNA of how we think as individuals, as business people, and as households as well.
Thank you, David.
Anyone with a burning question? Yes, Mike.
Gloria, I want to take us back to the Bomas of Kenya. And my memory of it is that as a result of it, we set up a multi-sector forum committee on national values, which I chaired. And ever since then, I've been very involved in this business of promoting national values. I think I'm the only one out of 55 million people who does. But, it's meant to be a distinct element in the annual State of the Nation speech by the President. Uhuru Kenyatta never even mentioned it, even though reports were submitted for it. The present president has been sort of alluding to it in superficial ways. But our problem, I think, stems from the fact that our national values are buried deep in the Constitution. There are 17 boring words, too many, and no one plucks them out or brings them to life in the way that other countries like Rwanda, Singapore, etc. do. And I could talk at much greater length about that and about how, for instance, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission promotes these national values. I linked up NCIC with Kenya Daima and worked together for responsible voting and peace in the run-up to the last election. And this all has to do with national values. I also worked to develop the values-based education for the new competency-based curriculum with a wonderful team. And yet that sort of has faded out. We need to get back to talking about national values. And they're not just Kenyan, they can be Africa-wide, to get back to your question about Africa-wide, at the AU or whatever. Values. Values determine attitudes, determine behavior, and whether it's ethical or not.
Great addition, Michael. Michael has worked with me on these issues over the last 10 years when I chaired the expert committee on national values. The most important thing, any reaction before we end up? Oh, yes.
The last one.
Okay.
Okay, I want to thank the panelists for a very vigorous discussion. And I want to go back and I want to keep my sights on private sector. Because those of us who have been involved in this work since 7 years, one of the things that we find very challenging, and that also speaks to the difference between the two initiatives. The Maritime Initiative is sustainable. We are talking about MCAC 2019. Question is, what happened between 2019 and today? Which takes me to the point. When you engage business, for example, when you're engaging business on this conference, to sponsor this conference, one of the things that became very clear to us is that business talk a good game, but not put your money where their mouth is. So it's well and good for, and this is what we can learn probably from the Maritime Initiative. How can business not just speak to this, but do something about it? And I think for me, that's what I would like to learn, how the Maritime Initiative became sustainable so that it's continuing to today, so that we can walk away from here to how do we do it? That for me is the ask.
Yes.
Wait. Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't have the time to lay the whole foundation, but the initiative began in 2012 and has gone on till now because it is driven by a business need. It's clear. If you don't align the line of sight between what you're doing and core business success, then why should business be interested? No, they'll fob it off to some other department like corporate social responsibility or something. It's not core. But if it is core, like our survival, our license, our ability to continue business is contingent on the action. So the clever thing is in repositioning the whole fight, that it is bang in alignment with that. And CEOs can see it. Then there's no financial obstacle, there's no human resource obstacle, there's only do it that then comes from the CEOs. And then it falls in someone's KPIs. They will track it and make sure that it's being done. So they started as only 8 companies in 2012. Today, there are over 200 companies globally, representing more than 50% of everything that moves by sea, and also representing more than 75% of all container carriers. So it has become a big lobby. Even the flag states, the registries have joined them. The P&I clubs have also joined them. So even those that they didn't expect to join have joined. And why? Because they're seeing that the collective action is actually yielding some results. And aspects of what was pioneered in Nigeria are now being replicated in Egypt, in Ukraine before the war, in India today, in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and we're also now doing some things in Ghana, and we're starting to talk in Senegal. Why? It's because it is helping a business need very directly. If people are bleeding money every day, they're looking for how to stop that. And if your anti-corruption move can help reduce that hemorrhage of funds, then everybody's on board. Thank you.
We are very grateful for the speakers that presented this afternoon from the 3 corners of the continent of Africa, from Nigeria, from South Africa, and now the experience of Kenya. The issue is to interconnect the continent. What works somewhere will work everywhere. Thank you very much for being patient, audience. I know you have more questions, but there's no time for us. MC, time for us to get out.
No, because of age, I will allow you to gently walk off stage. And as you gently walk off stage, Professor, I don't want you to pull my ears when you meet me on the street and say, Mukoko. So this is how I want us to appreciate them.
Thanks.
We have to be inclusive, yes. Oh, you want to take a photo? So this is how I would like us to appreciate the speakers because of inclusivity. So we will start with, for those who can hear, 2 sharp claps like this. Okay, so let's try that. 2 sharp claps. Okay, good. Then those who cannot see but can feel. 1, 2. Let's do that. 1, 2. You cannot see me, right? Let's do it again. 1, 2. And then we finish with the flowers. 1, 2. Okay? So let's go. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Thank you very much.